am pleased to be joined by Deji Andrews of Baseball Connections. You can check out his podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, and much more. How's it going, Deji?
Doing well. How are you?
I am doing great. I'm super excited. Baseball season it's hard to believe that it's already here, or in a few weeks here. And of course, it feels like just yesterday that the Kevin Cash took out Blake Snell in Game 6 of the World Series and choked it away. I'm excited. How excited are you for the baseball season?
I'm super excited. I felt like last year, it was good that we got some season, with 60 games and all, but I feel like we got robbed, at least compared to other sports, because we had, the pandemic kick in, towards the end of spring training. So we lost, most of the summer. We started the season in like late July, and then end of September, the season ends, postseason comes around. Before you know it, the World Series is over. It's like, we were in and out of baseball. It's just like I feel like it's been this long off season, even though there was like a tiny sliver of games in between. I'm ready for the full 162 again.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of disappointing the way it happened, and plus with the arguing back and forth between the owners, commissioner, and players, and they couldn't get on the same page. So hopefully after this season, because I want to say the CBA is up after this season, so that's not exactly great, but hopefully they can smooth everything out. So let's start off right away. Seems like the Dodgers are gonna be another favorite to win it this year. Is there anybody that could dethrone them or has the best chance to take down the champs?
I mean, the answer is no. No, nobody really has a chance to beat the Dodgers, in my opinion. But I think some teams will put up a fight. San Diego will put up a fight. We were all kind of, taken aback by San Diego getting Darvish and then Snell within the span of 24 hours. That's great and all, but I think the Padres are still about 2 years away from being really good. So, in the NL West, the Padres are their only real competitors, so they're going to win the division again. Looking at the rest of the National League, who else could compete with them? The Mets? I don't know. And then on the American League side, yes, you have some juggernauts there. Obviously, the Yankees are going to be good. Tampa Bay is going to be good, but the Dodgers are just too deep. Getting Trevor Bauer, and then another year of an older roster because they have a lot of young players. Bellinger is young, so an older, better Cody Bellinger, Walker Bueller taking a step forward. It's hard to beat that team. I don't see anyone beating LA this year.
Speaking of the Yankees, it seems like forever the last time they went to the World Series. Do you think this season they can finally break through and play in the Fall Classic this season?
I don't know. It's tough. It's really tough. The Tampa Bay Rays match up really well with the Yankees. They always have. And with New York, it always comes down to health of their stars, namely Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton. Mostly Aaron Judge, because he has more value on the defensive side of the ball as well. If they can stay healthy, if Judge and Stanton can stay healthy, then yes, I can definitely expect to see the Yankees come out of the American League. But if those guys are banged up again, I'll say Tampa Bay wins it again.
The Rays had an interesting offseason. Of course, they had a tough way to lose in the World Series against the Dodgers last October. Um, why did they trade Blake Snell, and do you think the Rays will be able to replace the former Cy Young Award winner?
Yeah. So they traded Blake Snell because the Rays don't like to pay anyone. They don't like to do this. They've done it before, and it was so predictable that they would trade Blake Snell. They did it with David Price in the past. To a lesser extent, they did it with James Shields. They're not afraid to let go of someone who's about to cost them a lot of money. They had given Snell an extension. I believe he was making around 10 million a year, which for the Rays is like an absurd amount of money. And they've proven time and time again that they can do it with, at least from the outside looking in, it looks like a makeshift roster. But what they do is they get a bunch of specialists. They'll get a lefty specialist here. They get like a righty specialist there. They get like these utility players, and they'll just piece together 27 outs from the pitching side. They'll piece together base runners on the offensive side. So I'm not surprised that they traded Snell. The reason they did it is because of money. They're a small market team. I put that in air quotes because we know that these teams really can afford more if they wanted to. And as far as do I think that he can be replaced, I definitely do. I definitely do. It's the same thing with the Cleveland Indians. Cleveland Indians operate the same way. they've had a lot of really good players come through and they've traded, but they've been able to replace them, especially on the pitching side. These teams have such good player development that they're not afraid to let go of a Blake Snell or back in the day, Chris Archer, or like I said, David Price, James Shields, guys like that. They'll just replace them with a Tyler Glass now, go out and get distressed assets like a Rich Hill or who's the other person they got? They the Rays got someone else. It's slipping my mind. They got another pitcher this year besides Rich Hill, like a veteran that will fill in for fill the shoes that Blake Snell left. So I think they'll be fine.
It's been an interesting offseason, but I feel like the Dodgers won that too after not really losing anybody and adding Trevor Bauer, the former or the recent NL Cy Young Award winner. What did you think of that pickup, and how well do you think Trevor Bauer will do in his first season in LA?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was the rich get richer. That was the first thing that crossed my mind once they signed Trevor Bauer. You know, I don't like to overreact to a lot of these things. I try to zoom out, take a big picture glance at things. Trevor Bauer on his career is a pretty, I mean, he's not average, but his career numbers, he's up in the high threes for his ERA. His FIP is around there. He's had flashes of brilliance, obviously last year with the Cy Young. And then, a couple years back, he was really good. But on average, he's just a little bit better than average. I think the Dodgers obviously have enough money to gamble. It's not really that much of a gamble. I mean, sure, they'll pay him an absurd amount of money this year and next year, but they will be able to wash their hands of this if he doesn't pitch well. Like if he just becomes a pretty mediocre pitcher, he'll be gone before they know it. So I think this was a very good pickup by them because at worst, he's there. At worst, he's like their fourth starter. That's like worst case scenario. And that's a pretty good luxury considering how good Trevor Bauer can be.
Yeah, and on top of that, they get back they get back David Price after he opted out last year, and then that Dodgers pitching staff looks stacked. Let's continue with the offseason. The Mets made some moves. That was kind of interesting because you normally don't see the Mets being aggressive. They added Francisco Lindor. What do you think of their chances of doing well this season?
I like the Mets a lot. I like them. I think they will do well. I think they'll have to get a wild card spot because I still think the Braves will win the NL East, at least if everything stays as it is. But I'm not afraid to say that I believe in the Mets. I feel like a lot of people see the Mets as, the laughing stock of the league. I mean, I understand they've had some really some weird episodes and off the field issues, Cespedes and all these things over the past few years, but they made some legitimate moves this year. I mean, don't forget Trevor May in the bullpen, who they went out and got. That's a very underrated signing. They went out and got Lindor, like you mentioned, James McCann, like you mentioned. They got some depth in their outfield. They have some players who have taken the next step. And like I keep talking about these young players who are ascending, like Dom Smith, of course, Pete Alonso, and then obviously the best pitcher in baseball, in my opinion, Jacob deGrom. So I think the Mets will be good this year. I'm not going to sleep on them. I'm not going to be one of the people who write them off. I expect them to be in the postseason this year.
Let's continue with the offseason with one more question here. I'm a big Cardinals fan, and they acquired one of the best third basemen in the league, Nolan Arenado from the Rockies. But I gotta ask, the Rockies pretty much gave up Arenado for a bunch of minor league prospects. They got, or they basically what happened is they pretty much gave everything they gave Nolan Arenado to the Cardinals for pretty much really for free, and plus they gave him $50 million on top of that. The Rockies were thinking about with that.
I'm still scratching my head on that one. I mean, I would have understood if they had just done the prospects without the sending the cash to St. Louis, because then it would just look like a salary dump. Okay, sure, we're dumping his salary, trying to save some money. But the fact they're eating a pretty solid chunk of his salary, I don't know. It could have been just the fact that I remember about a year ago, there were a lot of rumors that Arenado was upset with the front office in Colorado because they told him before he signed his extension, hey, we're going to build around you, we're going to contend and everything. But then they didn't make moves. So they were, a bottom dweller and they were not contending. So he wasn't happy with that. He wasn't happy with the way the front office, at least he believes, they lied to him. So it could have something to do with that there was some bad blood and they just wanted to part ways. But I agree, that's a head scratching move. I'm not too sure what the exact details were.
So we all know Mike Trout is the best player in baseball right now, but it seems like the Angels can never really even get close to even making the postseason. Do you think they finally this season break through and at least win a playoff series?
No, I don't. It's a bummer because I mean we all want to see Trout in the playoffs, but pitching is what wins in this game. Pitching is what wins in this game, and that's something the Angels don't have yet. I mean, Otani's good when he's healthy, but even then, again, I feel like he still hasn't scratched his potential because he's doing this whole two-way thing. He could be a really, really good pitcher if he just focused on pitching. He'd be a really, really good hitter if he just focused on hitting. But because he's doing both, there's only so much a pro athlete can do. I mean, it's tough. So they have him, Griffin Canning's out there. Um, I may be forgetting someone, but they don't really have anyone that's going to put them over the top, especially when you look at the AL West with Oakland and Houston. Those are legitimate teams like that you're going to be playing each of them 17 times a year. They don't have enough pitching to get it done, in my opinion.
Speaking of pitching, other than the Dodgers, because I think the Dodgers have probably the best pitching staff right now, but who else do you think has a really good pitching staff this season that could carry out and all the way to the postseason into the Fall Classic?
Yeah, that's a good question. The Atlanta Braves. I think the Braves pitching staff is really good. So they don't even have Mike Soroka right now, but he's supposed to be due back pretty soon. I think early summer. But even without him, you have Max Fried, you have Ian Anderson, the young kid who has just been awesome and was great in the postseason. You have those two. They went out and they got a veteran. I want to say Charlie Morton. Yeah, I think it was Charlie Morton. They went out and got on a 1 year deal. But they have a lot of really good young pitchers. I haven't even mentioned Bryce Wilson yet. I haven't even mentioned Kyle Wright. But I think the Braves have shown to be the most consistent because it's basically the same core of guys they've had for the last couple years. But because those guys came up so young, they just continue to get better. And they're like still like Max Fried is probably what like 25 years old, and he was outstanding in the postseason. So once they get Soroka back, I think that three-headed monster of Soroka, Fried, and Ian Anderson is going to be amazing. So that's one pitching staff. Another pitching staff I think is really good is the Mets. When you have Syndergaard back, we'll have DeGrom, Stroman, and Syndergaard as you know they're big three. They're three-headed monster. That's going to be a really good rotation as well.
Spring training is happening right now. I haven't watched much of it. I've kind of looked at it a little bit, but I haven't really paid much attention to it. Is there anything so far in spring training that you think that would have, do you think there's anything in spring training happening right now that has been big that could maybe carry into the regular season?
Yeah, I mean I've caught some of it here and there. I wouldn't really there haven't been any like big standouts. Like sometimes there's going to be like a rookie who just tears the cover off the ball. There've just been some rumors that, for example, Bobby Witt Jr. At Royals camp, he's turning a lot of heads over there. He was their first round pick a couple years ago, number 2 overall, and they're thinking he might have a chance to break camp with the big league team. Just little things like that. I wouldn't say there have been any like headlines or anyone like making any big splashes yet, but just some prospects who are like on the cusp who might make the opening day roster. We saw this happen with Fernando Tatis Jr. in 2019. There were rumors very similar to what we're hearing now with Bobby Witt, like, oh, can he break camp? Will he not? Will they manipulate his service time? They decided to bring him up, and that definitely paid dividends. And he took the baseball world by storm. And obviously, they rewarded him with this extension now, so they don't have to worry about service time.
Speaking of the Padres, they have so much now invested in that infield. Um, and you already said that the Dodgers are still the better team. But what do you think the Dodgers need to do, or not the Dodgers? What do you think the Padres need to do in order to finally beat the Dodgers and advance to the World Series?
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to pitching. So when you compare those lineups, I mean, LA might have a slight edge, but San Diego's right there with them. It's just that the depth of the not just the starting staff, the bullpen on LA side, it's just so deep. I mean, you have a guy like Julio Urias, who would, if he was like, if you put him on the Padres, he'd be one of their best starters, and he's like probably coming out of the pen for the Dodgers. So I think it's just pitching. Yes, you have Yu Darvish, who's awesome. You know, you have him. You have Blake Snell, who's awesome as well. But then after that, it does kind of fall off a little bit. Chris Paddock is there, but then they had Mike Clevenger get hurt. He's going to be out for the year. Whereas, LA, they'll throw Dustin May at you, Tony Gonsolin. This is at the back of the rotation. It's just pitching.
Tonio La Russa now is back after being gone for 10 years. He's now back. He's now with the White Sox. Do you think that was a smart hire, and how well do you think he does in his first year with the White Sox?
That's a good question, man. I was shocked by this signing. I was very taken aback. I didn't, nor do I think he's going to gel with this new school style of play. I mean, you have a guy who's in his 70s. He's like in his 70s, and he's obviously, you know, managed a lot. He has a lot of experience, and that's worth something. But the way the game is played now is so different than it was even a decade ago when he managed the Cardinals. So I don't know what the White Sox brass was thinking when they hired him. I'm sure, like, obviously he's a Hall of Famer, but you have a guy like Tim Anderson who's bat flipping all the time. You have all these young kids, Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez. These guys just like to have fun with the game. I don't know how he's going to approach that. I mean, if he's smart, in my opinion, he's just going to let the kids do what they do because they were good last year without him. They were good last year without him. So, it's kind of one of those if it ain't broke, don't fix it situations. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely a watch point.
Yeah, it doesn't really help that he had a DUI right afterwards. It was reported that he was pulled over recently, and that was not a. I don't think it was a great look, but we'll see what happens. Do you have a prediction for who wins the NL and AL MVP this season?
Wow. That's a good one because I mean, if you would told me to guess last year, I definitely wouldn't have guessed Jose Abreu, and honestly, probably wouldn't have guessed Freddie Freeman either. So I will give you a prediction. I will say in the American League, we'll have Mike Trout back at it. I think he's going to reclaim what's his. I mean, a down year for Mike Trout is like other guys like career years. Last year he still had a great year, but he wasn't like in the top few votes for MVP. But I think Mike Trout will win the AL MVP this year because I think he'll be healthy. In the National League, and that's tough. Freeman won it last year. It has to be on a winning team. Someone on a winning team, kind of. I mean, I mentioned Mike Trout, but he's just Mike Trout. He gets a pass. In the National League, it's gonna be someone. Could be someone in LA. Yeah, I mean, I'll go with Mookie Betts. I'll go with Mookie Betts there because I think he'll put together. I mean, he had some good numbers last year, and I mean, he's won it before in recent years, and he's still. I mean, he's at the top of his game. So I'll go with Trout in the American League, Betts in the National League.
Speaking of Mookie Betts, we all know Mike Trout is one, and Mookie Betts is number two for the top baseball players all around in the bigs. Who do you think after that is the next best player after Mookie Betts?
Yeah, ooh, yeah. This is a controversial topic. All around player, I would say Ronald Acuna Jr. That's what I would say. I would say Ronald Acuna. I would put Fernando Tatis right there. I would say one, Trout, two, Betts, Acuna three, Tatis four, and then Soto five. I think Soto is the best hitter. Actually, like I think he's the second best hitter in the game after Trout. But all around player, Ronald Acuna Jr. If he's healthy, I think we could see him do 40-40.
Where would you put Christian Yelich in your ranking? Because I think a lot of people have him somewhere in the top 10. I think he's good, but I don't know. It seems like he's pretty good, but it seems like he's kind of underrated. He won the MVP a few years ago. Where would you rank him there in the somewhere in? Or I'm assuming it's somewhere in the top 10, but
Yeah, he'd be my top 10. But I mean he did take a step back last year, which was a bit of a head scratcher. I'm not really sure what happened there, but that dude is legit. Now, he can hit. He's one of those guys who always could hit even early in his career, but the power came later. Obviously going to Miller Park helps as a left-handed hitter, but the power came later. So that's always a good sign. Someone who has the hit tool and the power just comes as you mature and get stronger and get older. So I think he'll rebound. I would put him in the top 10, probably in the bottom half of the top 10, down there. But I think he's a top 10 player.
you just mentioned Tatistis. Do you think he's the best shortstop in the game right now?
Oh man, I would still give it to Francisco Lindor. No, so I would still give it to Francisco Lindor for now. For now, but Tatis he's something special. But I would say Francisco Lindor is the best shortstop in the game.
I know it's pretty early right now, but do you have a prediction for all of the divisions? Who takes the crown for those, or for all the divisions in baseball? Do you have all the winners, or could you predict them?
Sure. I mean, yeah, my guesses would be the American League East, I'd go with the Rays. In the AL Central, I'd go with the Twins. In the AL West, I'll go with Oakland. Very similar to what we've been seeing. In the National League East, I'll go with the Braves. In the National League Central, it's tough, but I'll go with the Cardinals. I'll go with the Cardinals. And then in the NL West, it's going to be the Dodgers for sure.
Okay. Do you have a World Series prediction?
Yeah, I think LA will repeat. Um, but in the American League, I mean, I don't want to just say it's going to be a repeat of the Rays because I mean it's a full 162 now. So if you think of deep teams, I mean, you could have a wild card team win it. Like that's the problem. Like a team like Oakland, I want so badly for Oakland to be good, like in the postseason. They're a great regular season team. They just don't have the depth. To win in the postseason, you need depth. So I would not put Oakland in that conversation. I would say it would be an American League East team. So it would be the Yankees or the Rays coming out of the American League, one of those two teams.
I know this is kind of a random question. Not a lot of people are talking about it, but I'm a Cardinals fan, of course. I've mentioned that, but it seems like the Cubs are basically doing or did a fire sale this offseason. They let a lot of players go. I'm probably a little biased. I'm a little happy about that. But why do you think they're just basically doing a fire sale and trying to rebuild again after being so good just a few years ago?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's one of those things where a team misses their window. So they were good in 2016, won the World Series and everything. But then the following couple years, they just kind of stagnated. Chris Bryant just kind of floundered, hasn't really been the same player over the last couple years. I know he's been fighting some injuries. And it's just been one of those weird things. They've been surpassed by other teams. So they did a fire sale. I really thought that they would go ahead and trade Chris Bryant because why would you go ahead and trade one of the best pitchers in the game in Yu Darvish and then just stop? Like you really expect to compete for a division title with Kyle Hendricks as your ace, and stuff like that. Zach Davies, who they went and got from Milwaukee. So, okay, if you're going to get rid of Darvish, go ahead and clean house, get better prospects. Go ahead and get better prospects in exchange for Javier Baez and Rizzo and Bryant, but they didn't do that. So they kind of did a fire sale, but it was like a half baked. I think what they're trying to do, I think they're just kind of trying to show fans like, oh, don't quit on us yet. Sell some tickets and all that. Maybe by the trade deadline, we'll start seeing them get rid of those position players.
Another team that I kind of want to look at is the Houston Astros. They took the Rays all the way to 7 games after having somewhat of a disappointing season in the ALCS. How well do you think the Astros will be this season? And is there any chance that Jose Altuve can get back to what he was?
I think the Stros, I think they'll be okay. I think they'll be okay. I think they can still make the playoffs just as they did last year. But the problem is going to be the pitching. Zach Greinke and Lance McCullers are there, but not having Verlander is obviously a huge pain point for them. So I think they'll be fine. They could sneak in as like a second wild card or something, but they're not going to do a whole lot past that. Altuve, I don't think he's going to be the same MVP batting champion Altuve, but he can definitely be an all star still. I can still see him being an all star.
Do you think losing George Springer will have a huge impact with the Astros this season?
Um, Not that I don't think it's gonna be that big of an impact. The reason I say that is because the guys they have in his place, they have young outfielders who are good. They have Kyle Tucker, who was good last year, and I think he's like 23 years old. He's going to continue to get better. Jordan Alvarez missed last year, health and safety reasons. He's going to be back this year. He's going to be fine. They brought back Michael Brantley. So I think when you take the net difference as far as what how many wins above replacement their outfield produces, it's going to be pretty similar to last year.
All right. Before we wrap up the interview, is there anything else you want to talk about your podcast?
I mean, yeah, Baseball Connection. We're a daily baseball podcast. As you mentioned, you can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. But yeah, just the the main thing I can say is if you have someone who's interested in something like that and listening to a little bit of baseball every day, just send them my way, and Baseball Connection would be a one-stop shop for them.
All right. So you've been at it for how many years? We were talking earlier, and you said you had been doing it for a while. So how many years have you been doing it for?
Yeah, so I've been doing Baseball Connection for almost 6 years now. I
Wow.
started it back in 2015. First, I started just with doing YouTube videos and things like that, but then I decided to make it a podcast just so it was a little easier to a little easier to make, kind of pump out content and make more consistent content. So now I just have daily podcasts, daily episodes, which you can easily listen to. Whereas before, like people had to log into YouTube. You can still listen to me on YouTube. It's just not in video format. So yeah, that was 6 years ago when I started the the channel overall, but the daily podcast has been about 2 years.
Okay. That's a great. That's very interesting. I'll definitely be listening, and I'll tell all my friends and all the people that I know about baseball connections. I have a lot of baseball friends, so that's great. All right. Thanks for talking with us, and as always, enjoy the baseball season. Can't wait.
Thanks. Same to you.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Town Podcast, or the STP Pod for short. If you want to check out more videos of the Sports Town Podcast, click on the left. If you want to subscribe to the channel, click on the right.